let us continue with Chapter 5. Piglet meets a heffalump. Having made certain of this, he took the jar back to Piglet, and Piglet looked up from the bottom of his very deep pit and said, "Got it?" And Pooh said, "Yes, but it isn't quite a full jar," and he threw it down to Piglet. And Piglet said, "No, it isn't. Is that all you've got left?" Excuse me. And Pooh said, "Yes," because it was. So Piglet put the jar on the bottom of the pit, climbed out, and they went off home together. "Well, good night, Pooh," said Piglet when they had got to Pooh's house. "And we meet at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning by the pine tree, and see how many heffalumps we've got in our trap." 6 o'clock, Piglet. "And have you got any string?" "No, why do you want string?" "To lead them home with." "Oh! I think heffalumps come if you whistle. Some do and some don't. You can never tell with heffalumps. Well, have a good night." "Good night." And off Piglet trotted to his house, Trespassers W, while Pooh made his preparations for bed. Some hours later, just as the night was beginning to steal away, Pooh woke up suddenly with a sinking feeling. He had had that feeling before, and he knew what it meant. He was hungry. So he went to the larder and stood on the chair and reached up to the top shelf and found nothing. "That's funny," he thought. "I had a jar of honey there, a full jar, full of honey right up on top, and it had honey written on it, so that I should know where it was. That's very funny." And then he began to wander up and down, wondering where it was, and murmuring a little murmur to himself like this. "It's very, very funny, 'cause I know I had some honey, 'cause it had a label on it saying honey. A gloptrous full up pot too, and I don't know where it's got to. No, I don't know where it's gone. Well, it's funny." He had murmured this to himself 3 times in a stinging sort of way, when suddenly he remembered he had put it into the cunning trap to catch a heffalump. "Bother," said Pooh. "It all comes of trying to be kind to heffalumps," and he got back to bed. But he couldn't sleep. The more he tried to sleep, the more he couldn't. He tried counting sheep, which was sometimes a good way of getting to sleep, and, as that was no good, he tried counting heffalumps. And that was worse, because every heffalump that he counted was making straight for a pot of Pooh's honey and eating it all. For some minutes he lay there miserably, and when the 587th heffalump was licking its jaws and saying to himself, "Very good honey this is, I don't know where I've tasted better," Pooh could bear it no more. He jumped out of bed and ran out of the house and straight to the 6 pine trees. I'm not sick, I just had chicken in my throat. The sun was still in bed, but there was a lightness in the sky over the 100-acre woods which seemed to show off that it was waking up and would soon be kicking off the clothes. In the half-light, the pine trees looked cold and lonely, and very deep pit seemed deeper than it was, and Pooh's jar of honey at the bottom was something mysterious, a shape, and no more, but as he got nearer to it, his nose told him that it was indeed honey, and his tongue came out and began to polish its mouth ready for it. You might like this. There's a heffalump eating some honey right there. "Bother," said Pooh, and he got his nose in the jar. "A heffalump has been eating it." And then he thought a little and said, "Oh no, I forgot." Indeed, he had eaten most of it, but there was a little left at the very bottom of the jar, and he pushed his head right in and began to lick. This is quite a cute image. It's Pooh Bear, and there he is licking his jar, and there he is looking into the pit. By the by, Piglet woke up, and as soon as he woke up he said to himself, "Oh!" Then he said bravely, "Yes," and then still very more bravely, "Quite so." But he didn't feel very brave, and the world was really jittering about in his brain, and the word that was really jittering about in his brain was heffalumps. What was a heffalump like? Was it fierce? Did it come when you whistled? And how did it come? Was it fond of pigs at all? If it was fond of pigs, did it make any difference what sort of pig? Suppose it was fierce with pigs. Would it make any differences if the pig had a grandfather named Trespassers Willie? This Piglet being chased by a heffalump. Poor Piglet. He didn't know the answer to any of these questions, and he was going to see the first heffalump in about an hour or so from now. Of course, Pooh would be with him, and it was much more friendly with 2, but suppose heffalumps were very fierce with pigs and bears. Wouldn't it be better to proceed if he had a headache and couldn't go up to the 6 pine trees this morning? But then suppose that it was a very fine day, and there was no heffalump in the trap. He would be in bed all morning, simply wasting his time for nothing. What should he do? And then he had a clever idea. He would go up very quietly to the 6 pine trees now, peep very cautiously into the trap, and see if there was a heffalump there. And if there wasn't, he would go back to bed, and if it wasn't, he wouldn't. So off he went. At first he thought that there wouldn't be a heffalump in the trap. And then he thought that there would be, and then he got nearer, and as he got nearer, he was sure there would be, because he couldn't hear it heffalumping about. And there would be, because he could hear it heffalumping about, it was heffalumping about it like anything. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear, said Piglet to himself, and he wanted to run away. But somehow, having got so near, he felt that he must see what a heffalump was like. So he crept to the side of the trap and looked in, and all the one time Winnie the Pooh had been trying to get the honey jar off his head. The more he shook it, the more tightly it stuck. Bother, he said, inside the jar, and oh help, and mostly ow. And he tried bumping it against things, but as he couldn't see what he was bumping it against, it didn't help him. And he tried to climb out of the trap, but as he couldn't see nothing but the jar, and not much of that, he couldn't find his way. So at last he lifted up his head, jar and all, and made a loud roaring noise of sadness and despair. And it was that moment that Piglet looked down. Help, help, cried Piglet, a heffalump, a horrible heffalump. And he scampered off as hard as he could, still crying out, help, help, a horrible heffalump, a hoff, a hellable horrolump, hole, a hoffable hellerump. And he didn't stop crying and scampering until he got to Christopher Robin's house. I like these images. Look at that. Whatever the matter, Piglet, said Christopher Robin, who was just getting up. Hef, said Piglet, breathing so hard that he could hardly speak. A heffalump. Where? Up there, said Piglet, waving his paw. What did it look like? Like it had the biggest head you ever saw, Christopher Robin. A great enormous thing, like nothing. A huge big, well, like an enormous big nothing, like a jar. Well, said Christopher Robin, putting on his shoes, I shall go and look at it. Come on. Piglet wasn't afraid if he had Christopher Robin with him, so off they went. I can hear it, can't you? Said Piglet anxiously as they got near. I can hear something, said Christopher Robin. It was Pooh bumping his head against a tree root he had found. There, said Piglet, isn't it awful? As he held on tight to Christopher Robin's hand. Suddenly Christopher Robin began to laugh, and he laughed, and he laughed, and he laughed, and while he was still laughing, crash went the heffalump's head against the tree pot, smash went the jar, and out came Pooh's head again. And Piglet saw what a foolish piglet he had been, and he was so ashamed of himself that he ran straight off home and went to bed with a headache. But Christopher Robin and Pooh went home to breakfast together. Oh, Bear, said Christopher Robin, how I love you. So do I, said Pooh. I love you, Christy. Up next is Chapter 7. Eeyore has a birthday and gets 2 presents. That's for tomorrow. Now, sleep well, keep calm, find a llama, carry on. I don't know if you're going to be walking Nemo tomorrow. It is Monday tomorrow, after all. And I'm sure his little waggly puppy paws would love a stroll with a woman as beautiful as yourself. So, I love you dearly. Sleep well, keep calm, find a llama, carry on, or a heffalump. And I'll talk to you in the morning. Good night.